When my neighbor Delilah Thornburg destroyed my mailbox for the 7th time in 2 months, I knew this wasn't just bad luck. It was war. But here's what she didn't know. I was about to build her the mailbox of her nightmares. It was 6 in the morning. The smell of diesel exhaust still hung in the air as I stumbled outside in yesterday's work clothes, coffee mug in hand. Then I froze. My beautiful oak mailbox, the one I built with my own hands following my grandfather's old design, was gone. Not tipped over, not cracked, gone. All that remained were splinters scattered across the wet asphalt like confetti after a tornado. The mug slipped from my fingers. Ceramic exploded against the driveway and hot coffee splashed across my ankles. But the real burn was in my chest because there she was, Delilah Thornburg, backing her spotless white Escalade out of her driveway. Chrome bumper freshly dented, paint scraped. Her eyes never met mine, but her smirk told the story. She was proud of what she'd done. The taste of rage is metallic, bitter, and electric, like biting down on a battery. That was the moment I decided she wanted to play demolition derby with my property. Fine, I'd build something she couldn't destroy. What would you do if someone kept destroying your property? Let me know where you're watching from, because I have to wonder, does this kind of thing happen everywhere? Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in this suburban nightmare in the first place. My name's Marcus Ricks, 52 years old, recently divorced, and looking for a quiet life. After 20 years in the Navy Seabees, those are the folks who build airstrips and bridges under enemy fire, I thought civilian life would be easy. Retirement was supposed to mean peace, fixing things around town, maybe finally sleeping through the night. Willowbrook subdivision looked perfect. A modest ranch house on Maple Street, sunlight in the mornings, a yard I could actually take pride in. A garage to tinker in, a place where people waved when you waved first. At least that's what the real estate agent said. What she didn't mention was the HOA, Willowbrook Homeowners Association. Established 1987 with more rules than a military base and twice the attitude. Perfect lawns, identical mailboxes, driveways so clean you could eat off them. Every house painted in one of 3 approved shades, cream, sage, or warm beige, which looked suspiciously like the first 2. And ruling over this cookie-cutter kingdom was Delilah Thornburg, 47, real estate agent, HOA treasurer, and self-appointed enforcer of neighborhood standards. Picture this. Blonde hair that didn't move even in wind, designer workout clothes she'd never actually worked out in, and an Escalade that gleamed like it had its own lighting crew. The first time we met, I was finishing my grandfather's mailbox design. Solid oak, hand-carved roof, finished with cedar oil. A thing of beauty, a tribute to the man who taught me that craftsmanship was patience made visible. I was tightening the final bolt when I heard heels on my driveway. Excuse. Me? She said. Her voice sounded like honey poured over broken glass. I'm Delilah Thornburg, HOA board treasurer. That mailbox is not in compliance with community standards. I wiped the sawdust off my hands. Ma'am, I read the HOA bylaws twice. This meets every specification, height, setback, materials. Her smile was so cold it could have frozen July. Perhaps you misunderstood the aesthetic guidelines. We maintain certain standards here. Property values, you understand? The way she said standards told me she wasn't just talking about mailboxes. I pulled up the screenshots I'd saved. Section 4.3, natural wood construction permitted, maximum height 36 inches, earth tone staining acceptable. This checks every box. Her mask slipped for just a moment. Mr. Ricks, written rules are one thing. Community harmony is another. I'm sure a man of your background understands the importance of fitting in. She paused before background, and I caught it. She'd done her homework. Maybe even seen my Navy record. Maybe she just didn't like a blue-collar guy in her beige kingdom. The mailbox stays, I said quietly. Her lips pursed. We'll see about that. She snapped a few photos, turned, and clip-clopped back to her Escalade. The engine purred to life like money whispering in the dark. That was Tuesday. By Friday, my mailbox looked like it had been hit by a freight train. Posts snapped in half. Pieces scattered across 2 yards. Tire marks gouged deep through the flower bed I'd planted in my grandfather's memory. I called the police. Officer Jim Martinez showed up. Decent guy, sympathetic until I mentioned the HOA. His expression changed. Look, Mr. Ricks, he said, closing his notebook. These neighborhood disputes get messy. Without witnesses or video, it's just he said, she said. The cease and desist letter came Monday. Expensive paper, gold-embossed letterhead that smelled like entitlement and legal threats. Thornburg and Associates, Legal Consulting. According to Delilah, my mailbox violated community harmony standards and neighborhood aesthetic values. I had 72 hours to comply, or face fines of $500 per day. The paper was heavy. So was the message. We have lawyers. You don't. But 20 years of military problem-solving teaches you something. Paper bullies usually stand on shaky ground. So, I went digging. The county courthouse smelled like old paper and forgotten hopes. Janet, the records clerk, helped me pull the original HOA documents from 1987, and there it was. The original bylaws, reasonable basic stuff. Mow your lawn, no purple houses, keep cars in the garage. But tucked deep in Section 12 was a gem. Any rule changes required a formal vote. 60% approval, 30 days written notice. I compared the originals to Delilah's current rulebook. 90% of her so-called regulations had never been legally adopted. She was running a private kingdom on fake authority and expensive stationery. Back in the Navy, we used to say, know your enemy's supply lines. So I requested the HOA's financial records next. Janet raised an eyebrow but stamped my form. Most folks never bother to follow the money, she said. While waiting for those, I started documenting everything. Photos, recordings, timestamps. Every Delilah conversation logged in a green military notebook. Evidence, plain and simple. Then, out of nowhere, backup arrived. Her name was Ruth Kowalski, 78, retired paralegal, sharp as a blade. She showed up at my door with oatmeal cookies and a folder thicker than a legal textbook. Thought you might need some backup, she said, settling into my kitchen chair. Inside that folder? Photos, emails, bank records. Ruth had been quietly gathering evidence for years. Delilah's got a system, she explained. She targets families, drives them out, then flips their homes for profit through her own real estate firm. She spread the photos out like a detective unveiling a case. The pattern was undeniable. Families harassed over nonsense until they sold cheap. Delilah would list their houses, manipulate the comps, and sell high months later. That's when I realized it wasn't just personal. It was organized corruption hiding behind a white picket fence. By the next morning, I started building mailbox number 2. Same design, same love, but this time wired with a motion-activated security camera hidden in the roof peak, feeding straight to the cloud. 4 days later, the footage came in. 3 a.m., a dark SUV rolled up with its headlights off. Someone stepped out, bat in hand, and in less than 2 minutes destroyed everything I'd built. The body type, the stance, the dented quarter panel, all of it matched. Delilah Thornburg had just incriminated herself. I smiled in the dark. She wanted escalation, perfect. She was about to see what a Navy engineer could do when properly motivated. Thursday morning, her counterattack arrived. A petition taped to my door. Community action against disruptive neighbor. It accused me of running an illegal home business, throwing loud parties and intimidating residents. 12 signatures, half forged. By noon, the harassment blitz began. Noise complaints, code inspections, licensing officers at my door, one after another, each demanding explanations for crimes that didn't exist. That's when I realized this wasn't random. It was tactical. So I went to the one person who could help. My neighbor, Jorge Santos, a cybersecurity guy. His Ring cameras saw everything. We sat in his garage surrounded by wires and solder smoke. This is getting insane, Jorge said. Maria and I've been watching. What they're doing to you, it's not right. He pulled up footage from the past week. There was Delilah, clipboard in hand, walking house to house, spinning lies about me ruining the neighborhood. But Jorge had something Delilah didn't know about. Automatic cloud backups. Every second of her little campaign recorded in high definition. That's when I knew the tide was about to turn, because in Willowbrook subdivision, the mailbox war had only just begun. Delilah Thornburg had no idea her little manipulation campaign was being recorded in high definition. Every fake smile, every lie, every speech. She thought she was playing a neighborhood chess game. What she didn't know was that we were recording every move. Jorge grinned when he showed me the body cam, a device smaller than a pack of cigarettes. He tapped it twice. "I walk my dog with this," he said, eyes glinting. Then he added the words that became our battle motto. "Document everything. Trust nothing." That Friday evening, our chance finally came. Jorgie's dog apparently needed a long walk, a very long walk, past the Willowbrook Community Center, where Delilah had called an emergency neighborhood safety meeting. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, we could see her standing in front of a glowing PowerPoint screen, addressing a crowd of maybe 15 residents. Her tone? Smooth, confident, dripping with false concern. The autumn wind carried her voice clearly through the partially open windows. "Property values are our primary concern," she announced, "but safety comes first. We have a resident displaying aggressive tendencies, violating community standards, and disrespecting longtime residents." She was painting me, the guy whose biggest crime was rebuilding a mailbox, as a threat to the community. And the crowd? They were eating it up. Slide after slide, she displayed photos of my property, my non-conforming mailbox, my unauthorized landscaping, my truck, parked in my own driveway, apparently a violation for being a commercial vehicle. Then she made the mistake that would cost her everything. "I've been in real estate for 15 years, Delilah said, her voice full of pride, "and I know how one problem property can devastate neighborhood equity. We're protecting your retirement investments, your children's inheritance, your financial security." Her next slide showed property values supposedly plummeting, bright red arrows pointing down like blood dripping on the screen. She was building panic, manufacturing fear, to turn good neighbors into her personal army. But she underestimated Jorge. He leaned close and whispered, "Those numbers are garbage." I frowned. "You sure?" He smirked. "Marcus, I pull market data for fun. Willowbrook's values have risen 12% over the last 3 years. We had her caught red-handed using fabricated financial data to manipulate homeowners into supporting organized harassment." The meeting ended with applause and Delilah's final declaration. "Emergency HOA board session, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Immediate action required for community safety." That night, my garage transformed into mission control. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Coffee steamed from chipped mugs. My workbench disappeared under piles of documents and evidence folders. Ruth arrived first. Legal folders under one arm, oatmeal cookies under the other. "Thought you might need fuel and backup," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Jorge followed, laptop bag slung over his shoulder like a field medic reporting for duty. For 3 hours straight, we cross-referenced financial records, property listings, and HOA payments. Ruth scanned signatures with the precision of a sniper. "These petitions are desperate," she muttered. "Someone's pressuring her to wrap this up fast." Jorge's fingers clattered across the keyboard. "Bingo! Prestige Properties just listed 3 homes in Willowbrook, 15 to 20% below market." It all clicked. Delilah wasn't just harassing me for fun. She was creating a fake crisis, manufacturing neighborhood panic, to justify buying up homes cheap through her company. Prestige Properties. Every family she'd driven out had sold for less than they were worth. And 6 months later, those same homes mysteriously flipped for a profit. Classic real estate churn, powered by fear, fines, and forged authority. Tuesday was coming, and for once I was looking forward to it. The air that evening felt heavier, sharp, cold, and electric. The emergency HOA meeting was set for 7 p.m. in the community center, that beige temple of suburban conformity, reeking of industrial carpet cleaner and 30 years of petty power trips. By 6:30, the parking lot was jam-packed. I'd never seen so many residents in one place. It was clear Delilah had orchestrated a public execution. Mine, I walked in at exactly 7. Not in uniform, but close. Dark navy shirt, clean shave, and the quiet confidence that comes from 20 years of standing in hostile rooms. To my left was Ruth in her courtroom best. To my right, Jorge, every device hidden and recording. Conversations hushed as we entered. I could hear the whispers. "That's him." Finally, something's being done. Property values. Delilah stood at the front like a general addressing her troops. Navy blazer, perfect hair, posture rehearsed. Behind her sat the board, Cornelius Blackwood, golf tan and smug grin. Sandra Mills clinging to a legal pad like it was a shield, and poor Robert Jules, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," Delilah began, Her voice dripped honey over broken glass. "We face a serious threat to our community that requires immediate action." Click. My house appeared on the screen, blown up like a mugshot. Red arrows pointed to my mailbox, flower bed, driveway, and even my truck. "In the past month," she continued, "we've documented multiple violations, non-conforming structures, unauthorized modifications, and aggressive behavior toward residents." I could feel the judgment in the air, the room thick with whispers and disapproval. The taste of injustice hit hard, bitter as black coffee mixed with rust. Then came her favorite subject, property values. She clicked again, revealing the same fake chart from the safety meeting. "Recent analysis shows a sharp decline directly linked to these ongoing violations," she declared dramatically. That's when Ruth struck. "Point of order." Her voice cut through the room like a gavel. "As a property owner and retired paralegal, I demand to examine the methodology behind that analysis." Delilah's smile twitched. Just a crack, but I saw it. "We'll address questions after—" "No," Ruth interrupted, stepping forward. "According to the actual MLS database, Willowbrook property values have increased 12% over the past 3 years. She slammed printouts onto the board's table. "These are verified sales records, not manipulated propaganda." The crowd stirred. Whispers turned skeptical. Heads began to turn. The tide was shifting. Delilah tried to recover, voice trembling. "Well, while we appreciate Mrs. Kowalski's amateur research, our professional analysis considers, like the fact," Jorge interjected, "that your company, Prestige Properties, just bought 3 homes here for below market value after those owners were harassed into selling." The tension snapped like a live wire. Murmurs turned to gasps. Delilah's control was slipping fast. "This meeting is out of order," she barked. I stood slowly, my voice calm but commanding. "Out of order? Like the HOA bylaws you forged?" I held up the original 1987 incorporation documents, the real rules. "According to these, 90% of your so-called regulations don't even exist." The room exploded. Gasps, outrage, shouted questions. Cornelius looked sick. Sandra's pen clattered to the floor. "And here's the proof," I continued. "Footage of your vehicle destroying private property and conversations about forcing homeowners out for profit." The chaos was beautiful. Delilah's once loyal crowd was turning on her, fast, but Ruth wasn't done. "Marcus doesn't even know the half of it," she said, stepping up beside me. "I've been auditing the HOA's finances." She opened her folder like a legal grenade. "The HOA has paid $47,000 over 3 years to Thornburg Consulting Services for landscaping and maintenance that never happened. The photos didn't lie. Same lawns, same flower beds, zero work. And every check was signed by Cornelius Blackwood." Ruth's voice sharpened. "That's embezzlement, plain and simple." Jorge added the final blow. "Thornburg Consulting was registered 6 months after Delilah became treasurer. His only business category? Real estate market analysis." That's when Mr. Peterson stood up from the back row, voice trembling with fury. "So let me get this straight. Delilah's been stealing our HOA fees to pay her fake company, then using her real estate firm to force people out and flip their homes." I looked around the room, every eye on me now, and said it plain. "That's exactly what's been happening. This isn't enforcement. It's organized fraud." Delilah froze behind the podium, eyes wide, face pale, lips trembling. Her world was collapsing in front of 40 witnesses, and in that moment, I realized something. This fight was never really about a mailbox. It was about power, control, and the quiet ways people get crushed by systems designed to look legitimate. But not tonight. Tonight, the truth finally hit back. It's strange how silence can feel louder than noise. After the town meeting, after the shouting, after Delilah's smug little smirk as the HOA board adjourned early, the neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt like a warning. The air conditioner clicked on and I nearly jumped out of bed, half expecting to see headlights outside again. When you go from being the quiet neighbor to the target of a community, it changes the way you see everything. The smiles at the mailbox start to look fake. The friendly waves from across the street suddenly feel like surveillance. You stop trusting the silence. 3 days after that meeting, I found a notice taped to my door. Not in the mailbox this time, directly on the door. Big bold letters, violation notice, unauthorized structure. I didn't even need to open it. I knew exactly what it was about. The reinforced mailbox, the one I'd built to survive Delilah's tantrums. They called it a safety hazard and demanded removal within 7 days. I stood there on my porch, the morning light stretching long across the lawn, that paper fluttering in the wind like a white flag of surrender. But I wasn't surrendering. Not this time. So I did what any reasonable man would do when reason stops working. I started documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, recordings, copies of every email, every text, every violation notice. If the HOA wanted a war, I'd make sure the battlefield was covered in evidence. That night, I set up a motion camera pointing straight at the mailbox. Not hidden, not subtle. Let them see it. And sure enough, it took only 2 nights. At 1:43 a.m., a pair of headlights rolled past. A slow, deliberate crawl. Then the sound, crunch, followed by the unmistakable squeal of tires. When I checked the footage the next morning, I froze. It wasn't Delilah. It was the HOA president herself, Janet Rowe. She'd driven her own SUV into my property, hit reverse, and sped off like nothing happened. For a full minute, I just stared at the screen. It wasn't about the mailbox anymore. It never was. This was about control, about making an example of me. And that's when I realized something that changed everything. The HOA wasn't protecting the neighborhood. They were protecting themselves. See, I'd been doing a little digging since that meeting. I'd pulled county permits, land records, and financial filings. It's amazing what you can find in public records if you know what to look for. Turns out, several improvement projects the HOA funded, new landscaping, a security system, a so-called beautification grant, were all tied to a company called Rowe Development Services, Janet Rowe's company. She was billing the HOA for her own projects, tens of thousands of dollars at a time. And the kicker? The HOA treasurer was her brother-in-law. So while they were fining me for a mailbox, they were embezzling money from the very homeowners they claimed to represent. That realization hit like a freight train. Every threat, every petty fine, it was all part of a smokescreen to distract people from the money trail. And suddenly, Delilah's constant harassment made sense too. She wasn't acting alone. She was their distraction, their bulldog, keeping the neighborhood focused on drama while the real corruption stayed hidden in plain sight. I took all the evidence I had and compiled it into a folder labeled Rowe Scheme. I wasn't sure what to do yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let them bury this. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. Marcus. The voice was low, tense. This is Daniel. You don't know me, but I used to work for the HOA. I think you're onto something. For a second, I didn't say anything. Then I asked the only question that mattered. What did they do? There was a pause on the line. Then he said, whatever you think you know, it's worse. The next day, we met at a diner outside the subdivision. Daniel looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder every few minutes. He slid a USB drive across the table. These are the financials, he whispered. Invoices, ledgers, emails, everything they buried. I didn't touch it at first. Because the moment I did, I knew there was no going back. But I did. And when I opened those files that night, my heart sank. They weren't just stealing HOA funds. They were laundering money through fake maintenance contracts and construction bids. Using the HOA as a front, Janet Rowe wasn't just a tyrant. She was running a criminal operation. That night I sat in the dark, staring at the glow of my laptop screen. Outside, the sprinklers hissed softly in the distance, the rhythmic sound almost mocking me. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute. This was a crime scene with a picket fence, and I was the only one who knew. So I made a decision. If they wanted to silence me, they'd have to try. Because I was done playing defense, I emailed copies of the evidence to 3 people. My attorney, a local reporter, and a friend in the state auditor's office. Then I printed a set for myself, sealed it, and locked it in my gun safe. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A single text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. That's when I knew the war wasn't over. It was just beginning, and this time, I wasn't the only one fighting back. The morning started with the sound of diesel engines and arrogance. Delilah Thornburg's voice carried across Maple Street like a legal threat dressed in perfume. Santos, you're welcome to file complaints through proper channels, she snapped. But this work order takes precedence over personal opinions. Her demolition crew moved with the precision of mercenaries, marching toward my garage where the steel mailbox stood waiting, the trap disguised as a monument. Their leader, a thick-necked man with scarred hands and eyes that had seen too much, paused to inspect it. "This is going to take some serious equipment," he muttered, running calloused fingers along the welded seams. "Marine-grade steel, military-spec construction. We're talking hours, not minutes. Just get it done," Delilah barked, her composure cracking like thin glass. "We have deadlines to meet. That was her mistake." The kind of fatal arrogance that always shows up right before justice arrives. Because what Delilah didn't know was that the restraining order might have stopped me from lifting a finger, but it said nothing about my invited guests. Detective Sarah Morrison had prepared me for this exact moment. Her words echoed in my memory. "If she makes a move, call this number." Don't say her name. Just say the package is being delivered. So I did. "Morrison, this is Marcus," I said into the phone. "The package is being delivered as scheduled." 30 seconds later, the quiet hum of suburbia shifted. Unmarked sedans rolled in from both ends of Maple Street. Not local police, not code enforcement. The kind of cars with antennas you don't notice until it's too late. The kind that make criminals' stomachs drop. The demolition crew saw them first. The shift in their body language was immediate, from casual confidence to quiet panic. "Ma'am," the crew leader said carefully, glancing down the street. "We might want to reconsider this timeline. Looks like we've got some complications." But Delilah, blinded by her own delusion of control, waved him off. "Complications? We have legal authority and emergency permits." "Start cutting." The first sledgehammer swung. The impact rang out like a church bell announcing Judgment Day. The vibration rippled through my driveway, up my spine, into my chest. The steel didn't dent, not even a scratch. The second blow sent sparks flying, tiny meteors scattering across the concrete. The sound echoed through the neighborhood like the dinner bell of justice. By the third strike, the handle of the sledgehammer snapped clean in half. That's when Detective Morrison stepped out of the lead sedan, badge glinting in the morning sun, flanked by federal agents in plain clothes. "Delilah Thornburg," she called, voice calm but commanding. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and violation of civil rights under color of law." Time slowed. It always does when the truth finally arrives. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of idling engines and the distant chirp of a bird too young to understand. It was witnessing history. Delilah froze beside my mailbox, the same one she'd tried to destroy, now standing unbroken, reflecting sunlight like a mirror of consequence. The demolition crew took a collective step back, hands visible, eyes wide. They'd seen this kind of arrest before. They knew not to move. Detective Morrison's voice carried across the lawns like a verdict. "Delilah Thornburg, you have the right to remain silent." Her badge caught the light, gleaming like a symbol of every homeowner who'd ever been bullied into submission by people hiding behind HOA titles. Delilah tried to fight it. "This is harassment," she screamed, mascara cracking like her composure. "I'm conducting legally authorized HOA business under emergency municipal permits." Morrison held up a stack of papers thicker than Delilah's ego. "These permits were obtained through fraudulent representations to city officials," she replied. "That's a felony." And just like that, the suburban Queenpin's kingdom collapsed. Neighbors began to emerge. At first a few, then dozens. Within minutes, more than 40 residents lined the sidewalks, silent witnesses to a long overdue reckoning. Mrs. Patterson stood on her porch, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Jorge, steady as ever, recorded from his driveway. Ruth, carrying her battle-worn evidence folder, walked toward the agents like a general delivering the final piece of the puzzle. "Detective," Ruth said, voice sharp with purpose. "We have additional documentation of the financial crimes." The scene was pure catharsis, years of fear, fines and manipulation dissolving into cheers and disbelief. And then, right on cue, the screech of expensive tires. Cornelius Blackwood's BMW rounded the corner, engine whining, golf cap askew. He slammed the door and stumbled out, face pale beneath the tan only money can buy. "Delilah, what the hell is going on?" he shouted, scanning the crowd before spotting the badges. "Mr. Blackwood," Morrison said evenly, "you're under arrest for conspiracy and aiding and abetting fraud." He froze, realizing the game was over. No lawyers, no loopholes, no country club favors. The demolition crew leader, Torres, tried to quietly pack up equipment, pretending he wasn't part of it. Morrison didn't miss a thing. "Mr. Vincent Torres," she called out. "You're also under arrest for criminal conspiracy and destruction of property." Torres dropped his sledgehammer with a clang that echoed like a gavel.
"Lady, I just work here."
"Maybe," Morrison replied, "but you've been just working at 6 different fraud sites. That makes you a participant." That's when the news van arrived. Channel 7's investigative reporter, Sarah Jules, stepped out, microphone in hand, camera rolling. She'd been following our story since Jorge leaked the first batch of evidence. Her voice was clear and confident as she faced the camera. "This is Sarah Jules reporting live from the Willowbrook subdivision, where federal agents have just arrested the HOA president and treasurer in what appears to be a multi-year fraud operation targeting homeowners." Then she turned to me. "Mr. Hendris, you've been at the center of this investigation. Can you tell us how this all started?" I looked at the camera, at my neighbors, at the steel monument behind me, and said the truth. It started with a mailbox, my grandfather's design. Delilah decided it didn't meet her personal standards. But what we uncovered went far beyond property disputes. She was stealing from this community while pretending to protect it. The microphone trembled, slightly in Jules' hand, the weight of the story sinking in. Federal charges: embezzlement, conspiracy, mail fraud, civil rights violations. The list stretched like the years she'd spent terrorizing her neighbors. As agents loaded Delilah into the back of a federal SUV, she made one last attempt to salvage her delusion. "You people have no idea what you've done," she screamed through the open window. "Without proper management, this neighborhood will collapse. Property values will plummet." The crowd's response was unanimous. Laughter, applause, cheers of good riddance. Mrs. Patterson shouted the loudest, "We'll take our chances." Then Ruth stepped forward, addressing the cameras like the legal veteran she was. "What Ms. Thornburg fails to understand," she said, calm and precise, "is that real property value comes from community trust, not control. She destroyed that trust the moment she started stealing from her neighbors." The federal cars rolled away, taking Delilah, Cornelius, and their enablers into the system they thought they controlled. And just like that, for the first time in years, Willowbrook was quiet, peaceful, free. Jorge clapped me on the shoulder, grin wide as daylight. "So," he asked, "what are you going to do with that indestructible mailbox now?" I looked at it, dentless, scarred, beautiful. "I think it's going to become a landmark." 6 months later, I stood in the same driveway, coffee steaming in the morning air, watching the sunrise over a different kind of neighborhood. Delilah got 5 years in federal prison. Cornelius got 3 and a lifetime ban from HOA boards. Torres served 18 months and flipped on the rest. Judge Peaton's resignation hit the papers 2 weeks later. No golf, no glory, just disgrace. But those weren't the real victories. The real victory was watching Mrs. Patterson plant roses without fear, hearing the Rodriguez kids laugh in Spanish without lowering their voices, seeing Jorge's teenage son strum his guitar on the porch while neighbors applauded instead of complained. For the first time, Willowbrook felt like a community, not a battlefield. The emergency HOA election that January drew every single resident. First time in history. Ruth was elected treasurer. Jorge became secretary. And somehow the guy who built an indestructible mailbox got elected president. Our first act was symbolic and necessary. We burned Delilah's 30-page rulebook and replaced it with 3 simple pages written by the people who actually lived there. Transparency, fairness, freedom. 3 words. 3 pages. 1 new beginning. The recovered money, $47,000 in embezzled funds and $23,000 in fraudulent fines, became the Willowbrook Community Justice Scholarship. Each year, we'd send 1 student to law school to fight HOA abuse and defend homeowners' rights. The first recipient, Maria Santos, Jorge's daughter. Watching her accept that scholarship, I felt something deeper than pride. I felt legacy. My steel mailbox, Fort Knox, as the neighbors started calling it, became our monument. People took pictures with it. Tourists actually stopped by. The city even listed it as a local landmark. But the real monument wasn't the steel. It was what it represented, resilience. Mrs. Patterson hosted weekly coffee mornings. The Henderson boys' guitar echoed across porches that once hid behind curtains. Families who'd planned to move decided to stay. That May, we held the first Willowbrook Unity Day, food trucks, live music, and a smash-your-own mailbox booth, cardboard replicas only, where kids lined up to take swings while adults laughed until they cried. We raised $12,000 for the scholarship fund that day. Other neighborhoods started calling, asking how we did it. Detective Morrison began speaking at our meetings, teaching communities how to document abuse, preserve evidence, and stand together. "You've created a template," she told us at our celebration dinner. "You probably saved thousands of families from what you endured." My garage smells like sawdust again. No more cutting oil, no more welding sparks. Jorge and I started a small repair business, Santos and Hendris Home Services, helping neighbors fix things without paperwork or permission slips. Ruth opened a legal aid clinic for HOA victims. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were builders. Then came the documentary crew, David vs. Goliath in Suburbia, premiering next year, with proceeds supporting the National Homeowner Protection Foundation. Apparently, our little mailbox war had gone national, and here's the twist Delilah never saw coming. Property values in Willowbrook rose 18% in the 6 months after her arrest. Highest in the county. Turns out people love living in freedom. No more for sale signs. No more whispered fear. Just laughter, music, and sunlight on freshly painted porches. Sometimes, I still catch neighbors taking selfies with Fort Knox. It stands there quietly, scarred but undefeated, collecting letters, bills, and the occasional thank you note. And every time I look at it, I taste something better than revenge. Better than victory, I taste hope. So if you're fighting your own HOA nightmare, remember this. Document everything. Find your allies. Build something they can't break, and never underestimate the power of neighbors who've had enough. Because justice isn't just won. It's built, one unbreakable act at a time. And subscribe to Tale. Times for more tales of little guys taking down suburban tyrants. Because justice shared is justice multiplied.